Yeah, I did change, and I'm really glad I changed.
This one's wife. Stage security risk at Harry hearing? Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Prince Harry was escorted from a court hearing about his security arrangements, and he was shielded by his burly bodyguards after an agitated supporter disrupted proceedings. The bespectacled supporter, a diminutive, shaven-headed black woman who looked in her 50s, had attracted attention after arriving late to the public gallery and repeatedly shifting in her seat and fiddling and fidgeting with 2 phones and a notebook. The Duke's long-term head security man, David Langdown, and another burly aide appeared to focus on the woman, anxious if a threat to his security and safety was present. When the hearing broke so the public and press could leave, before a secret session involving security details could begin, Langdown and the other bodyguard ensured that as the Duke was led out of the room at the Royal Courts of Justice, they were between him and the woman. As he passed her, within touching distance, the woman suddenly shouted out indistinctly what appeared to be, "I support you, Prince Harry." As the Duke was hurried out, the woman turned to the press gallery and said, "If you're members of the press, you're the reason he's not in England." She was then kept to one side by a member of court security before being led out of the building, away from members of the public. As she was led out, the Daily Mail approached to ask what she was talking about. She refused to say. Only after she had been taken away did the Duke return, accompanied by his watchful security, for the secret session. Wow. A bit of a kerfuffle in the court as Harry leaves and then has to be ushered away because somebody called out that she was a supporter. This has led to speculation that this woman is actually a Sussex Squad member, a supporter of this one's wife and Harry, and may actually be known to them. Indeed, it has been suggested that the woman who was in court is this woman. I am eternally grateful for the red arrow pointing out who they're referring to from the screenshot. After all, the description of her being a shaven-headed black lady who looked like she was in her 50s did have me wondering, could it be a white man with salt and pepper hair? So thank you for the red arrow. It clears up that confusion. Now, the pictures presented show the lady who made the interruption in court, who you can see wearing the black top, and then there are 3 pictures, which presumably are the same person, if the theory that's being presented is accurate. She is peeping into the picture, doing a bit of photobombing in respect of a picture that Harry's having taken with somebody else, and then she appears to be involved in 2 selfies with Harry, and she's apparently called Danny. I could not say with any certainty that the woman in the picture from court is the one that appears photobombing or in the selfies pictures. I can agree that that both show a woman, and she's black, and she hasn't got any hair. But beyond that, whether they're the same person, well, I certainly wouldn't think it would pass any standard of proof in a court. But nevertheless, the suggestion has been that this is her. So, what was this interruption? Was it simply from an over-enthusiastic supporter of Prince Harry, who happened to be in court because she wants to see him succeed with his claim? Or was it just a crazy who happened to attend the court and decided to yell something out? Of course, A and B might be the same thing. Or C, was this individual somebody who is a member of the Sussex Squad, who is known to Harry and this one's wife, and she was involved in some staged interruption for the purposes of trying to demonstrate that there is a security risk to Harry by having a supporter cry out, "I support you." But the suggestion is, and that has been doing the rounds on social media, is that this was staged, that it was orchestrated either by Prince Harry and this one's wife or people acting on their behalf, and involved somebody that was either known to them or, at the very least, an ardent supporter because they're a member of the Sussex Squad. Well, let's examine this further and bring some common sense to bear and logical analysis in all of this. First of all, who can attend court hearings in the United Kingdom? Well, if they're held in public, anybody can. You can, for instance, go along to your local magistrate's court and, unless there is a specific ruling or order that means that the hearing is in private, you can enter the court and sit quietly at the back and watch proceedings. You can do so similarly at the county court and the High Court and an employment tribunal. There are some hearings you are not allowed into, for instance, family hearings, those relating to national security, and where an order has been made that the hearings to be held in private. Then you can't attend, but most you actually can. So there's no prohibition on this lady turning up to watch the appeal hearing. Furthermore, you don't have to make an application, you don't need to get a ticket. Of course, in some instances where there is perhaps somebody famous or a particularly interesting case taking place, then there might be pressure on seating and you have to queue and it's first come, first served to be able to get in and sit in the public area and watch what's going on. But this lady is perfectly entitled to attend as it's a public hearing, save for the parts that have been allocated as private. She has to go through security at court. She can't bring in guns or firearms or knives or any other weapons into the building and should be reported to the police if she attempted to do so. And the government's website provides information about various things that could be viewed as a weapon, for instance, metal cutlery, syringes, unless you've got a prescription, toy guns and things that look like guns, ropes and chains and such like. Full-length umbrellas, crash helmets and so forth. So security might stop you with those. And you go through security, you go through a check like you would at an airport. And you empty your pockets, take off your shoes, coat, gloves and hat. You may take off your belt. You go through an archway detector and you might be checked by hand with a hand scanner. So everybody goes through security. So it's not like she's going to suddenly produce a dagger or a butter knife and have at Prince Harry. The question then becomes, was this somebody who has been set up for the purposes of demonstrating how vulnerable Prince Harry is from an attack by having a supporter express her support? You would think that if you were going to set this up, you would have someone who might, for instance, throw a bag of flour over him, or some orange powder a la Just Oil, or maybe even give him a little shove. Not do anything to actually harm him because it's a setup, but demonstrate that somebody can get close to him and impinge his personal space with the suggestion that he was at physical risk of attack. Maybe the suggestion is that by getting so close to him and saying, "I support you, Prince Harry," that demonstrates that he's at risk of some kind of attack. Well, the fact is, there are other people around him. So, despite the fact that they've gone through a metal detector and they've gone through security, if they wanted to swing one at Prince Harry and land a punch on him, they could. And security might be able to react to stop somebody getting to him, but if someone's quick with their fists and quick on their feet, they might be able to land a blow or two on the old Prince of Pancakes, not that I'm advocating that anybody should do that, before security can intervene. Of course, they would then end up in serious trouble as a consequence of assaulting somebody. Could it be that this was a staged attack? Well, if it was, the security team didn't seem to be briefed about it, as they ensured that they scurried him away pretty promptly. Now, it's important to point out that the judges would most likely ignore this. Interruptions do occur in court hearings. Occasionally, people are exasperated by what's going on. Sometimes they feel the need to protest, and invariably they're either given a warning to shut up, or they are instantly removed if they're being particularly boisterous and problematic by security. And they could be held in contempt of court, which means they potentially could end up with a period of time in custody. But in a hearing such as this, where she just shouted something out, the judges would most likely ignore it. And I can tell you now, they're certainly not going to be swayed by this pantomime performance if it was stage, because this hearing isn't an examination of any evidence. It's an appeal against the decision to downgrade the police protection that Prince Harry is given at public expense when he visits the United Kingdom. His barrister has stated that Ravec, the decision-making body, didn't follow its own standard procedures, and therefore the previous judge made a wrong decision. This is an appeal. It's not a trial. It's not a hearing at first instance. It's an appeal against an existing decision. And basically what that means is it's examining whether the judge's decision was wrong or unjust because of a serious procedural or other irregularity in the earlier proceedings. For instance, the judge made an error of law, or the judge was patently biased. Here, the basis is that the judge's decision was wrong, but this is about examining his decision, not the actual evidence, and therefore attempting to show that there is some kind of security risk is entirely irrelevant to the appeal, and no judge, and certainly not an experienced Court of Appeal judge, is going to be swayed in the slightest by such a performance. They would likely just think she's an over-exuberant supporter of Prince Harry, and that's it, and they move on to the next thing. Even if they entertained the notion that this was staged, they would likely ignore it. Potentially, it could be viewed as a contempt of court on the part of the woman, and she could face repercussions. Potentially, it could be an attempt to pervert the course of justice by attempting to influence the judge's decision with such activity. But whether you'd be able to tie that to Prince Harry or this one's wife, that's another matter. And I doubt very much that the judge would look to refer this to the police or hand the file to the Attorney General for further examination of the circumstances. They would likely just conclude this was an over-exuberant supporter of Prince Harry, nothing to see here, and it certainly isn't going to influence their decision-making. Accordingly, if you were concerned about it having any impact on the proceedings, take it from me, it won't. And it's doubtful, although I know that some of you would like further action to be taken, it's doubtful that it would be. As I mentioned, potentially her behaviour could be viewed as a contempt of court, and if you were able, and this is a big if you were able to prove that there was some plot involving Prince Harry and or this one's wife, who had instructed this woman to behave this way in order to try and sway the judges, then that could be viewed as perverting the course of justice, which is a serious offence. You might remember, for instance, the author Geoffrey Archer. He was convicted of perverting the course of justice for submitting diaries which had been doctored in a libel trial. I think he got 4 years in prison, which was pretty harsh considering the sentences that are doled out to people that do far more serious things, but that's another matter. And Jonathan Aitken, a former government minister, he similarly was found to have lied, and he received a prison sentence for perverting the course of justice. So it is something that is taken seriously in certain instances, but of course you'd have to be able to demonstrate beyond reasonable doubt that Harry and this one's wife caused this woman to behave this way with the intention of trying to sway the proceedings. And I suspect that that would be rather difficult to prove, and moreover, nobody would be really interested in investigating it. Far simpler to put it down to, as I mentioned, an over-exuberant member of the public. But then let us ask the question, even though this is something that isn't going to sway the judges, isn't going to affect the outcome, might it be something that this one's wife and Prince Harry would orchestrate? Well, Prince Harry's a dimwit. He isn't going to understand the subtleties and nuances of the way that the law works and the basis of the appeal and the fact that judges aren't going to be moved by such a performance. Judges take an objective, dispassionate approach. It's what they're trained to do, and it's what they've done for many, many years. And you're dealing with Court of Appeal judges who've got oodles of experience. But I wouldn't put it past a dimwit such as Harry to think that this could sway the judges in his favour because he's a simpleton. For this one's wife, naturally, the delusion of her narcissism would cause her to think that something could be done. After all, the provision of security is a residual benefit, not that she's itching to attend the UK any time soon. And even if the security decision was changed, I really don't think that she's going to necessarily make an appearance because the prospective risks to her need for control are so great. Her narcissism would stop her attending. There would have to be some major gain perceived by her narcissism to cause her to visit the United Kingdom. But nevertheless, the idea that she should, and that her and Harry should receive security paid for by the taxpayer, irrespective of whether it's actually used, would matter to a narcissist such as this one's wife because of her sense of entitlement and her grandiosity. Furthermore, because she has no sense of accountability for her behaviours and no emotional empathy for those affected by it, and for the need to nullify the threat to control that the decision poses, it is conceivable that because of her narcissism, she would be moved in tandem with Harry to concoct some scheme utilising one of the dim-witted minions that constitutes the Sussex Squad to partake in such a pantomime, thinking that it could sway the judiciary. It won't, but the low cognitive function of both Prince Harry and this one's wife, the latter harnessed by her narcissism, could well result in them concocting a plot to undertake such activity. There are plenty of ifs and buts about all of this. For instance, it's not certain that the woman who was in court is a member of the Sussex Squad. It's not certain that she is the person that's in the other pictures that are with Prince Harry. But if we assume that she is, then it still might just be the case that it shows, yes, she's a supporter of Prince Harry and that's why she's there. It doesn't demonstrate that it was orchestrated on the part of this one's wife or Prince Harry or somebody instructed by them. However, it wouldn't surprise me if the dimwit and the narcissist attempted something like this because he's stupid and would think it might work, and she's entitled and has no accountability for her behaviours, and of course governed by her absence of boundary recognition and absence of emotional empathy. It could be the case that she would want to concoct something like this. As I state, there are a number of hurdles to demonstrate whether it actually is the case, but as a theory, as a proposition, it is more likely than, say, a normal person that these two would stage something like this, but that makes it far from the case that it actually was staged. A logical analysis, utilising the understanding of an individual's narcissism and the dim-wittedness of her partner, set against the context of how these things work. Reason and rationality, courtesy of the Ultra. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.